regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We'll begin with would Councilmember Steckler lead us?
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vignell,
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
and Councilmember Paddock.
Present.
You want to close that door? We're getting on, thanks. Getting echo. Okay, we'll move to audience communication. We'll start in the chamber. I understand Mr. Wright would like to address the council. Name, address, 3 minutes, please. Go to the podium.
Evening. For those who served, no vacancy. For those who served, no vacancy. According to the post on the city's website, quote, there is currently no additional space at this time. We will reopen the application process once the monument is able to be expanded. In other words, there are no vacancies to have veterans' names forever chiseled into our current 8 beautiful black pillars. In May of 2010, our city Veterans Monument was dedicated in order to perpetually honor those men and women who dared to serve our country in one of our 5 armed forces. It's a touching reminder we must ceaselessly honor those honorable women and men. Why is the vacancy sign, figuratively speaking, on the heartwarming and emotional Mill Creek artful masterpiece? Each of the 8 columns has 3 sides, and on each side, one will find 20 service persons' name, rank, military occupation, and armed forces that they served in. Those 480 honored veterans represent a small number of the men and women who sacrificed for our beloved land of liberty. Evidently, the lack of money and the lack of us veterans pushing to have our monument expanded are a major factor for this now no vacancy sign being informally posted. When I brought my goal to Senator John Levick, and a Coast Guard veteran, he was all in, but his first question was, well, Chuck, why didn't you bring this project to my attention during the last legislative session? I could have had this tribute to our veterans put into the state budget, close quotation marks. Our senator is currently working on some funding options, which in the near future, he will share with you. To thrust forward with this project, I'm suggesting you establish an exploratory monument committee, and please place my name on that list. As I discuss this movement, many naysayers advise me it's too expensive, and the majority of our city council members will only slow walk your ideas. My answer to those defeatists is if I and many of my veteran peers would have let this happen in the first place, our city would have been deprived of this emotional and award-winning tribute to our veterans. We veterans know we must take down that symbolic no room in the end and turn it into a large flashing neon sign, vacancies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Anyone else in the audience like to address the council tonight? Seeing none, anyone online? Nope, I see a nod of a head. Okay. Before we get to our study session, we have a proclamation to read on behalf of the council for the Juneteenth celebration. This is a proclamation of the city of Mill Creek, whereas Juneteenth is the oldest nationally commemorated celebration of the end of slavery in the United States and recognizes a period in U.S. history that shaped and continues to influence our society. Whereas Juneteenth celebrates the joy and resiliency of the Black community and acknowledges the contributions of enslaved Africans, including culture, development, and economic growth. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 freed enslaved people, however, it wasn't until December of 1865 that Congress required the Confederate States to ratify the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude. June 19th, 1865 marks the day when Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas to take control of the state, and Major General Gordon Granger informed enslaved African Americans that they were free, thus ending 246 years of chattel slavery. And whereas despite 157 years passing since slavery was officially ended in our nation, people of African descent continue to fight to dismantle systems of racial oppression and discrimination in the United States. And whereas the observation of Juneteenth is a time to honor the legacy of Black and African American ancestors, it is a time for reflection, rejoicing, self-improvement, and strengthening commitments to cultivating communities that work towards eradicating racism and providing everyone with a sense of belonging. And whereas June 19th, 2023 marks the anniversary of the annual Juneteenth celebration, and whereas in honor of Juneteenth, the Washington legislature passed a measure in the 2021 legislative session making Juneteenth a state holiday, and whereas the city of Mill Creek values the contributions of Black and African American people, the contributions Black and African American people have made to our nation and local community through sharing their history, heritage, and compassion. And now, therefore, I, Brian Holtzclaw, the mayor of the city of Mill Creek, on behalf of the city council, do proclaim June 19th, 2020 as Juneteenth in the city of Mill Creek. Okay, we have a slight change to our agenda. We're going to move the celebration, the next item, to, I think, our next meeting. Is that correct? At the end of the month?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay, so that's going to bring us to our study session. So we are going to move down to the table. I'm going to pause for a second to let Mr. Nolan do his business of opening his planning commission meeting, and then we'll move forward from there. So if everyone wants to come on down.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so here to open our joint planning commission meeting of June 13th, 2023, and I will do a roll call. So Commissioner Gable.
Present.
Commissioner Abrams. Oh, he's online. I saw it. Okay. Commissioner Brile.
Here.
Oh, good. You got it. Commissioner Barunda. Present. Vice Chair Hamilton. Here. Chair Matt Nolan. Officially open our meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and now that we have our 2024 comprehensive plan update, combination of our planning commission as well as our commissioners, council, excuse me. With that, I'll hand it over to Director Todd to kick it off. Thank you.
We'll keep passing the baton.
Yeah.
So tonight is kind of a different format, so thank you everybody for coming and accommodating this. We got about an hour and a half planned in terms of the agenda. Andy Roberts from OTAC, Clay White from LDC are going to do most of the presentation, but we've also got some book turning activities. looking forward to a lot of presentations, but a couple of breaks where they're going to do some interactive things with you, and looking forward to kicking off the comprehensive plan process. And now, it looks like, Andy's ready.
Ready. Yes, well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you again. Would you like me to speak into the microphone?
I think you're good, you speak nice and loud.
Okay,
That
all right.
phone does it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Mandy Roberts with OTAC, and I'm a principal planner with the firm. And our firm is the prime consultant for the comprehensive plan update. But we're very happy to be partnering with Clay White with LDC Corp. And Clay's been working with the city for a while now on middle housing and other activities. So we decided to partner up on the comprehensive plan update. We're working together. And also with us tonight is Kara Donovan. She's an urban and environmental planner with OTAC, and she's going to help us take notes and record some information from you all when we get to the interactive part. So there's a couple of things I just want to mention about our team. We specifically designed this team to be able to handle the broad scope of elements and topics that you have to address as part of a comprehensive plan. So everything from economic development and housing to environmental considerations, transportation. We have a transpo group on the team working on that piece of it, to the community engagement side of putting together the plan. We have everything covered with this team, so we're proud of that. There we go. Okay.
Mandy, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I was just curious, how are we keeping up with the commissioners that are on, so if, in case they want to talk, while, is somebody watching that while we're doing the presentation so that they can be seen somehow?
I can keep an eye at hands for you.
They're saying, yeah, okay, thank you. It was bothering me, so I couldn't focus, so thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay. I think I pushed the wrong button, so sorry about that. Okay. All right, so I think one of the interesting things about doing this kind of work is it is interdisciplinary. So you have planners and community design specialists working side by side with engineers who understand water systems and wastewater and stormwater management. So our firm and LDC both have interdisciplinary capabilities. Bringing that to the table is really important. And we are working on other comprehensive plans of Snohomish County. So we're up on all of the growth allocations that we need to be aware of, as well as the affordability analysis that's been done through Snohomish County tomorrow. And really the countywide planning policies and the regional planning background that we need to align with as part of this plan. So I won't go into a lot of detail on these, but for example, 2 places in Snohomish County that we're working that are very different include Linwood, which has 2 light rail stations planned in the next, 20 years, sooner rather than later. And they're reimagining their city center, basically, in Linwood. Does anybody know where downtown Linwood is right now? Kind of? We don't know, yeah, so thanks. That was kind of a rhetorical question, sorry. But they want to create more of a downtown, more of a sense of place. So they're looking at, for example, creating kind of a central park downtown that can have a lot of energy around it. And so their comprehensive plan is going to have a lot of focus in that city center and Alderwood area and how that area is going to grow and change over the next 20 years. On the other side of the county in Arlington, which is kind of a foothills community, gateway to recreation, but also a place that's experiencing a lot of growth. They have an Amazon fulfillment center there, for example, which is kind of a big thing. We're working with them to think about how to preserve their small town scale, downtown and Old Town, but also accommodate the growth that they need to accommodate that's been allocated to them by the state, the region, and the county. So very different places, but still needing to address these common elements that are required of comprehensive plans. And so we do have some really great consultants working with us, sub-consultants. Leland Consulting Group out of Portland is part of our team. They worked on the Mill Creek Boulevard Sub-Area Plan project, and they've done quite a lot of work in Snohomish County around transit-oriented development and looking at the Everett waterfront and other key areas where change has happened. So they're really up on the market conditions They're up on trends that are happening recently, like what's going on with retail, right? We're having some issues with retail. They have a lot of data at their fingertips that help us in a plan process like this. And they've also been tracking working from home trends, which are, you know, another thing that's been kind of a disruptive but interesting aspect of how we plan for our communities. So we're glad to have them on the team. I just mentioned that because we have a lot of needs related to understanding the market, consumer demand, and housing demand that we'll need to address as part of this process. So let's just talk a little bit about why we're doing this. And I will pause in a few places as we go along, so it's not just going to be all presentation tonight. But let me just say we did design tonight to be a lot of presentation with a few question periods here and there. And then we have about a 30-minute time frame at the end where we'll have even more time for questions and discussion. That said, we will be coming back to the Planning Commission and the City Council this fall sometime. We don't have the exact date set, where we'll have a much more, I think, more interactive discussion with you. We'll be asking you some specific questions about key assumptions that we should include in the comprehensive plan and getting your input on those. So, Clay, right, this is just step one.
Yes, absolutely.
Just step one. So I'm assuming a lot of you maybe have taken the Planning 101 course through Washington State, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. But you've got a little bit of a primer on the Growth Management Act, which was enacted in 1990, and that through growth management, you know, cities that are planning under Growth Management Act have access to funding and grant programs. But they also have, that's the carrot, they also have the stick, if you will, of needing to plan for growth smartly under the Growth Management Act. And that's really why we do comprehensive plans. The last comprehensive plan that Mill Creek did was in 2015. And it used to be that cities had to update their comprehensive plans every 8 years, and so that's why we're updating ours actually in 2024. But now it's every 10 years, so there's been a little bit of flexibility with the Department of Commerce. They're really the governing agency over the process, and we're updating plans every 10 years now. So these are some of the questions that a comprehensive plan helps to answer. And if we haven't answered it already in 2015, it's time to answer it again as part of our 2024 plan. So who are we? Who do we need to be here in Mill Creek? Why are we planning? How does this fit into our past planning efforts? How was our public involved in the process? What's our vision for the future? And what are we going to do, and how are we going to do it? So the vision and then kind of our mission is how we're going to achieve our vision, right? Some of the common pitfalls that you want to avoid in a process like this is that there's a lot of perception out there about things. We want to stick to data and the facts and be, you know, cognizant of that. And that's why I'm saying we need to have an understanding of these trends and issues that are happening so we can, you know, address those accurately. We don't, a lot of, and we'll get into, maybe we'll send you some reference materials, but a lot of comprehensive plans can be very lengthy and a lot of text. And most of our clients these days are saying, we want a plan, I'm sorry, I'm just going to move this right my way. We want a plan that's easy to read, easy to use. It's not 150 pages of text, but more graphically friendly with infographics and data and, you know, visually appealing. The visual character of that plan represents our community well. So we're trying to move away from really lengthy documents, a lot of text, to more graphic representation. And we can also reference other documents. We don't have to put all the content in from every other plan the city's done. We can have short descriptions of the other plans and reference those other plans as part of our plan. So these are just kind of some of the things that we want to try to avoid. Under GMA, one of the things that's really interesting is just the idea that it's meant to be a grassroots process. So even though we do talk about the Department of Commerce, the state agency, this kind of a regulating body, they really see themselves as a guiding body, and they really are supporting you in updating your comprehensive plan. So it really starts from the city and your community, gathering input from your community, and developing a plan that really represents your vision and addresses your concerns, mitigates potential impacts that might occur with the growth, and that you're coordinating and prioritizing your investments here in the community. So, for example, when we talk about kind of that approach, we'll put everything Mill Creek at the top, and that kind of starts with your code and thinking about what your code regulates. Even though this is a comprehensive plan, we need to support your code. That's what the set of policies does. It supports your code and development regulations. And then we'll also think about sub-area plans, functional plans, your surface water management plan, for example, your transportation plan. Those all need to integrate well with your comprehensive plan. Then we'll be in our comprehensive plan, and then as we work our way, throughout the region of the state, there are county-wide planning policies that Snohomish County has updated that we need to align with. And then Puget Sound Regional Council has the Vision 2050 plan that we're also going to be aligning with, and other cities throughout the region are aligning with that too. So I would say if you want to do some homework, go, just Google or go online and look for the Snohomish County countywide planning policies and PSRC Vision 2050. Clay's probably spoken about these to you in the past, but it'd be good to kind of just check those out and make sure you see where we need to align with some of those policies. And then, of course, as I already mentioned, the last stop is the Growth Management Act and just being consistent with that. And here are some of the goals of the Growth Management Act. These are kind of good goals. I mean, nothing to be worried about. We just want to really make sure, for example, that we're preserving the natural resources that we love so much in this area. So trees and wetlands and streams, that's a big part of it. And some of the ways that we do that are reducing sprawl that kind of invades those areas and managing growth by putting growth where it's best serving our communities. But we also, within that, need to be preserving and protecting property rights, making sure that permitting is predictable and fair and that it works really well for the community. So I won't read all of these goals to you, but they were developed over 30 years ago, and they still make sense today. These are some of the plan elements that are included in plans. So on the left-hand side, left-hand side, those are required elements for a comprehensive plan. The right-hand side are optional elements. And in the 2015 Mill Creek plan, you elected to include these elements that you see here. And this is one of those things that will come back in the next workshop with you all to kind of get some input on. What are some of the optional elements that we could include and why, and get your input on how much those are needed. So I think I already talked about that. There's another piece, and Clay's going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. There's a lot going on with the state legislature, as I'm sure you're all aware. We had House Bill 1220 that was legislated a couple of years ago that we've been working on middle housing and housing solutions under. And then this year we had a number of other pieces of legislation that went through that have to do with legislation for single family and adding density to single family areas, not HOA areas, those are protected. But Clay's going to talk more about those in a minute. But I just wanted to mention that as we think about the plan elements, that'll have some implication on whether we should include those. For example, climate is one of the pieces of legislation, and we'll be needing to address that in the comprehensive plan one way or another. So, okay, PSRC Vision 2050. These are some of the important things to understand about that. So it's the big carrot at the top there is access to transportation funding that comes through federal and state funding sources. And so their role as a regional agency has a lot to do with reviewing grant applications and allocating those project funds based on the priorities and the grant process. So they have a regional transportation plan, will need to be consistent with that. They also have an economic development strategy, and that has a lot to do with identifying centers around the region, and planning for those centers. So we'll get more into that level of detail as we go along. They also have multi-county planning policies. So the countywide planning policies, we call those CPPs, and the multi-county planning policies that are in the regional plan, we call those MPPs. So you'll see those acronyms, that's what that's referring to. And the planning policies really guide not just what's happening in Snohomish County, but the other 3 counties of the region as well. So it's a really important kind of framing document in how we plan. And just speaking of that, you know, there's a lot of growth still projected in this region. It's one of the intensive areas for growth and interest. A lot of people are interested in being here. So we know that by 2050, we need to accommodate 1.6 million people, 1.2 million jobs. And so the plan is really, the regional plan is really about how do we do that in a way that also addresses some of these key focus areas in our region: climate change, equity, displacement, housing. You hear about housing every day in the news. I know you do, and that's really an important part of this vision. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Clay, who's going to cover some of the next slides. This one right there. Okay. Thank you.
Question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do those numbers come from to accommodate 1.2 to 1.6 million in growth?
Those come from Puget Sound Regional Council. So they're looking at, that was 2017 to 2050 for the 4-county region: Kitsap, Pierce, Snohomish, and King counties. What's actually pretty amazing is if you go back and look at growth estimates that were made like in 1990 or 2000, they're very accurate compared to what actually occurred within like 1.5%. So, you know, I think it's pretty close on target that this is the amount of people and jobs that we'll be looking at. So, but at least it provides some perspective that it's not just the city of Mill Creek that's growing, but it's also this big regional issue. Our communities are changing, and all the cities and counties in this area are planning and dealing with a lot of the same topics.
I had a question on that too. The 1.6 and 1.2, do we know how much of that is in Snohomish County?
Yes, I could definitely get you that information. So there's a portion that is kind of forecasted for all 4 counties. I think it's around 25% is Snohomish County,
Okay.
if I have that right. I think about 50% is King County, maybe a little bit less than 25%.
We'll get the numbers.
Yeah, we'll get those numbers right.
And at some point, can I also see the history too, like you mentioned, over the past 20, 30 years and what that looks like?
Yeah.
The history of growth.
Yeah, of how it shows, he says it's been accurate to within 1 to 2%. I think that's certainly germane.
Yeah, so, can do that for you. So, think about, so the King, Pierce, Snohomish County, and Kitsap are a little bit different. We're talking about Vision 2050. So if you were in the rest of the state, you wouldn't have this regional planning requirement. And so what would happen is, you know, the state would say, you're going to plan as X county, you're going to plan for 100,000 people. And you would sit down with the county and the cities and say, all right, well, we're going to plan for this much, and you're going to plan for this much, and you would divide all of that out. Pretty easy exercise. Vision 2050 is a little bit more granular. So it's basically trying to link up the nexus between transportation and planning. So, you know, the original office for Puget Sound Regional Council is a transportation planning organization, doling out federal dollars for transportation projects. But certainly there's a link between where you're making investments in infrastructure and where people are going to live. So there's this more granular process. So what PSRC has done is broken down this process where they've created these different buckets of metropolitan cities, core cities, high capacity transit communities, unincorporated areas. And so like your metropolitan city in Snohomish County would be the city of Everett. Your core cities are Bothell and Linwood. And so it's getting where Grant and I are saying, we want to focus a lot of growth in Everett because that's where we're making a lot of transportation, light rail's coming, same with Everett. Buffalo's got the high capacity transit, 405, and so more growth is focused in those areas and less is focused in areas, like rural areas. And so, Mill Creek falls into a high capacity transit community. And there's several communities, including a lot of the unincorporated Snohomish County, Marysville, Lake Stevens, Marysville. There's probably about 8 or 9 cities that fall within that high capacity transit kind of framework. Last year, they went through that process of sitting down as high capacity transit communities and how do we allocate this subset of growth. So there's a growth target that has been allocated and adopted within the county-wide planning policies now. That the city of Mill Creek has planned for. So, and it's the same for jobs. So on the employment side, it's allocated into these different buckets. The cities and the counties that are within those regional geographies, the core cities and the metropolitan cities and the high capacity transit communities, they sit down, figure out who's going to take what. That was then adopted within the county-wide planning policy. So we have that growth target. We've talked about it in front of the Planning Commission and Council before, how much growth the city will be planning for out to 2044. So we talked about that state level. We have all these state laws that provide us guidance, and then you have this regional level that is Puget Sound Regional Council, and then you have county-wide planning policies. And those are policies that are shared between the county and the cities in the county. And it's really focused on having great coordination in terms of growth as you're growing. There's things to be coordinating on, if it could be transportation or housing or infrastructure or all of those types of things. So these are shared policies, and the Mill Creek Comprehensive Plan is required to be consistent with those regional set of policies. So those have been adopted by Snohomish County. There's a process with Snohomish County tomorrow that the city has been involved with, and so you can plan in a way that fits for the city of Mill Creek, but you're always having that lens of being consistent with that regional vision. So, and if you get there, then that kind of means you're also going to be consistent with the Puget Sound Regional Council policies and your state laws as well. So, Mandy mentioned there's been a lot of new state laws that have passed. This is not the full list. We will get you the full list. So one of the big pieces of a comprehensive plan, that's probably the biggest piece, is you're planning for growth, jobs, people, and then you're updating your plan to be consistent with new regional policies and state laws that have passed since the last time you updated your plan. So there's several statutes that passed prior to this last legislative session and many this year as well. So in terms of House Bill 1220, that modifies the housing element requirements. And to make it kind of brief, it made the planning requirement much more granular. So whereas before, like, it may have a statement like, the city needs to plan for a variety of housing types. Now the state law says you're going to plan for these housing types. You're going to plan for and it specifically mentions that. What we've also talked about before is it also now allocates your growth target by income band. So it gets more granular. So it's saying, hey, the state doesn't just need a whole bunch more housing to accommodate growth. It needs it to provide housing for people that make different incomes. So through Snohomish County tomorrow, they've gone through a process to allocate housing units by income band. And that would be like 0 to 30% area median income, 30 to 50, 50 to 80, and then you get up to 120% area median income. So it's even more challenging. I mean, I think the one thing that hopefully that we move through this is you're not alone in this effort. Every city is going through this for the first time. And, you're responsible for planning for growth. You don't build housing. So you're not building that growth. So it's about getting the right policies and zoning in place. And we're here to get you really good information so that you can make informed decisions. So we're going to get through this piece together, but it's a big challenge. There's, in House Bill 1717, there's new requirements for coordination with tribal nations. So we'll be doing that outreach, and if they're wanting to coordinate and communicate as part of the comprehensive plan update, we'll be certainly doing that. Two big bills that will also be impacting the city as we plan for growth. House Bill 1110 and 1337. House Bill 1110 is the middle housing bill. As it applies to Mill Creek, it will require that the city allow at least two single dwelling units on every single family lot. There's a lot of provisions in the bill, and I can go through them if I have them right here, but there's lots of bullets of where it doesn't apply, the things that, the kind of code provisions that you have to apply to it. We're gonna work through all of those things. House Bill 1337 requires the city to allow at least two accessory dwelling units on every residential lot. Again, if there's a lot more to the bill, and we'll go through all of it, but that's a big deal. As Manny mentioned, there's places like it doesn't apply in areas where you have critical areas. It doesn't apply to areas with existing CCNRs because of restrictions, although in the future, you can't permit housing developments that would not allow those units to be built. So some of the challenges there. And then, of course, we've got the new climate legislation as well. So that's going to require a new element of your comprehensive plan to be focused on climate. There's some interesting pieces on this because the city is going to be required when the city is going to be required to take this action. So this may not be required to be fully done as part of this update, but I think that we'll be working with the city team to make some recommendations that I think it would be smart to start the process of developing those policies and implementation measures, because you're already doing your planning for growth, and then we can see how far we get. But each one of these bills has different timelines for when it has to be implemented, and so what we'll be doing over the next couple of months is breaking this all down for you so that we can then have an in-depth conversation. And then, of course, a lot of work has happened over the last 6 or 7 years to get us to the point we are now. So it feels like as soon as you do a comprehensive plan update, the comprehensive plan starts over again. So the regional level, the countywide level, the city level, and then we will be here again. So, but we've got that December of next year deadline to get this work done, and we'll put out that schedule together that will get us from where we are to where we need to be. Yes.
2020 census had the county's population of 827,950. Growth strategy projects that by 2044, Summers County will have 1,136,309. Comprehensive plan, they have growth target plan.
Okay, so now we're gonna pause a minute and take some input, and Kara will do flip chart. And by the way, we're also gonna send this questionnaire out to you so that you can, if everybody doesn't get a chance to have input tonight, people can send in their input to us by email. But we want to take a few comments on what, this is kind of a checklist that's up here, by the way. So we've got speaking about the legal and policy framework, which Clay and I just talked about in depth. Then we have kind of just the language and structure of your plan, that there might be some important considerations there that you would think of. And then emerging planning issues, which these are kind of, the ones that are listed here are kind of more what's happening regionally. But there might be some things here in Mill Creek that are important to you that you want to make sure we address in the plan. So I'm going to kind of open it up a little bit here and just ask for your input on, it could be about the look and the feel of the plan, what's important to you about that. Or it could be about emerging trends in your community that you want to make sure we're addressing. So those two questions, give us some input. I know I'm kind of hitting you cold here, so give you a moment to think, but excuse me.
This is just for the council.
No, for planning, for us, yeah.
Okay, Sandy, could you explain what social resilience is?
Social resilience is, could be things like making sure that you have enough health care and public services in your community to serve the social needs that you have, which is part of the comprehensive plan. could be making sure that your parks and recreation element is adequate to serve growth and needs in the community. So there's some different ways that you can define it, but those are a couple of examples.
Mandy, could you elaborate a little bit on what are they looking for us to add into our planning for climate change? What type of elements are they looking for us to be looking at?
That's flexible. Clay, do you have more of a sense of that yet? That might be something we bring back in more detail.
Yeah, I mean, the state has adopted climate policies to reduce emissions substantially by 2050, and so this is requiring you to develop an element, so you'd have policies that would guide, how the city's going to respond to this new state legislation, and then kind of implementing, could be regulations or it could be programs to reduce vehicle miles traveled and emissions.
Could something like adding chargers for electric vehicles be part of this, or?
Yeah, there's going to be a process to be able to evaluate a whole bunch of strategies and tactics that you could utilize. And what I've found is that there's a lot of things that you're probably already doing that are heading in that direction. You just haven't called it for climate,
Right.
So, and it could be things like adding transportation choices that are getting people, so, I mean, you're already heading in that direction.
Improving access to the bus rapid transit station. Okay.
Commerce was provided some guidance.
Yes.
What
Yep.
they intend.
Any day now, we're waiting for that to come. How's it already come?
We have draft guidance out.
Oh, we have draft, okay, good, yeah. How are we handling questions?
You just work with planning commission and council.
Okay, yes, you had your hand up?
I did.
Okay.
So in terms of what we're working on here, a couple of things in terms of language and structure
Yeah.
for checklists. Really making sure that it's, why we're doing this,
That's
really
clear.
focusing on, it's very clear that this is, I really appreciated your, every city is going through this.
Yeah.
This is not just, Creek has decided to do this. This is something, I don't know if mandated is the right word, or there's that kind of language about the seriousness of this is something that has to happen, there isn't, or what the, really making it clear what those options are, because I feel like that's a lot of the language that we hear about, well, just don't do it,
Yeah.
a lot, we hear that consistently.
Yeah.
When knocking on doors, just we just don't need to.
Oh.
So making sure we don't need to plan for growth, so stop it, is what people would like their elected officials to do. And so I think making sure that's very clear in that type of language about why we're doing this.
Okay.
In terms of emerging planning issues, they may already be part of this, so they see their buckets, and I really appreciated the social resilience, but anything to do with schools,
Mm-hmm.
I think is really, really, really
Okay.
important
Great.
for Mill Creek.
Yeah.
Anything to do with schools and overcrowding and any of that, because that's what you'll hear, a lot of families that are here and what we're looking for. And then the other emerging planning issue, again, maybe part of the bucket already, would be public safety.
Yeah.
How this impacts, whether it's funding for public safety, what does that look like? I think that those are the
Right.
kind of, I don't immediately see
Yeah.
part of these buckets.
This is a very small list right here, but yeah, great. And some communities set kind of level of service standards, and I'm sure your police department has those, so we'll check in with police and fire emergency services and work with them on their planning, yes?
Have we already eclipsed the time when homeowners association and community associations either opt out or opt in, as it were, for some of the exemptions for dwelling
I
units?
believe so, because it's been signed into law, so I think that at least,
It's already been signed, or?
June
Yeah.
30th, it takes effect July 1st, so HOAs would have until June 30th to do something.
We should probably make that known for our community as well, so they understand that maybe there is a couple of weeks still left to opt in, or.
Good point. Okay, great, couple more comments, yes?
And it may already be, I haven't looked at it comprehensively with the comprehensive plan, but is it possible to put online links to the bills, the
Yes.
language of the bills and the bill summary? Sometimes the summaries of these bills can be very, very biased and nebulous, and they look great until you read all the details, and a lot of people don't like the details because it's hidden in a bunch of verbose language.
Yes.
Is it possible to give you the list
Yeah.
of what that does?
We'll
summary.
put together a sheet for you with that information directly from the state legislature website. You can actually go in and look at the actual bill
Actually,
too,
no,
if
I'm
you
not-
want to read
yeah.
Times New Roman text.
Actually, and I'm thinking, I'm talking about, is it possible online, on the online comprehensive plan?
Oh.
To put the language of those
Yeah.
bills with anything that we're gonna be substantiating, as well as a summary, a fair summary, an accurate summary and details for
Yeah.
what the bills entail.
You mean include links in the plan so people can go find more information?
Absolutely.
And we can definitely do that. I think it's a good idea. The drawback of that is just sometimes those links change over time and we can't keep them all updated, you know, because we're not gonna be updating the plan for maybe another 5, 10 years or so. So we just have to remember that, you know, that some of the links will go bad over time. So for that reason, some of our clients are saying, we don't want to include those links, we just want to tell people where to go to find information. So either way, we could do it either way.
Could I put it on a PDF instead? Just copy it and put it on a PDF?
Yeah.
It's not, it's actually a long
A
standard.
separate PDF, yeah,
that's-
absolutely,
that's-
yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't link to the state website, because for each bill, you're gonna find some of them, there's 5 or 6 iterations, and then you got all the amendments, and it's gonna confuse people, but you go to the final bill and full PDF of that, and then
Yeah.
full final copy of the bill report.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
It's usually prepared by nonpartisan legislative staff, so it's.
Final bill
Yeah,
summary,
okay.
can you put that down? Final summary bill, yeah, okay, great. Okay, yes,
I may be way off base, so just correct me if I am, and I'll politely shut up. I've heard a lot about affordable housing and, you know, the guidance, the bills and such, but I look at our city and our city needs, especially over the next 10 years, and we have such limitations in space
yeah,
and land, and we also have needs, and what has built our city, and a lot of the people that live in the houses now we have not huge, but a substantial elderly population.
yeah,
That unfortunately are sitting on a substantial amount of equity in their homes because we had a horrific rise in values on our homes, but they have nowhere to go. So, and people have no homes to buy because there's no inventory. So in looking at the needs of our community, our seniors need a place to go. And if they had a place to go, then they could afford to sell their homes, which would actually help to make a more vibrant community. But there needs to be a place, not just a retirement home, but a, you know, senior condominium
mhm,
type of upscale housing alternative as opposed to a senior living
right,
type of facility. But if we were to develop something creative that would open up housing alternatives, give our seniors a chance to sell their homes, enjoy their equity, enjoy a very good lifestyle, and yet also open up housing without having to build more housing.
absolutely.
I don't know if that's in conjunction with the structure that's listed up there, but I'm just thinking of a need in our community.
And I just, thank you so much, I think that's good. I want to recognize that we're not able to take questions from the public during this workshop session unless we can do that later, but yeah, so I know you keep holding your hand up, and I'm so sorry, I just want to make sure, so you don't hold it up until, we'll get back to you, okay, a little bit later, is that okay? Yeah, okay. All right, so Clay, do you want to speak to that? Yeah.
Few pieces on that is, that's absolutely occurring. People are, people looking to downsize their homes or people looking for that first home. I think that was part of the auspices behind the middle housing and ADU bills, so you could provide other housing options. I think you can also look at that in your zoning as well. So, you could look at providing zoning incentives to provide senior affordable housing or other housing types. And so I think part of this project is going to be looking at, how do you point the right code incentives to the types of housing that you're required to plan for and that you're looking to aim for, as you look out for growth. So it's, we'll certainly be looking at that as a project.
That's a good point. Zoning services that would be attracted to seniors wouldn't necessarily be attracted to first-time homeowners.
Correct. So it's trying to look at all those options,
Right.
and finding places for everyone to be able to live in the community.
Okay, we're gonna need to move on. No, let's take one more comment, sorry, go ahead.
One of the things on language structure that actually 2000
It's kind of what's in it for the community, like what's in it for me as a citizen.
Okay,
Of
yeah.
putting this plan together. The positive side of why we have to do it, if you will.
Right.
On the emerging planning issues, I think calling out the economic sustainability and economic growth would be really important for the
Yeah.
and whatnot. And then the other side of that is attempt to, and I don't know how we would phrase this, but growth is consistent with the character of the community. How the goals would want to hit and still be consistent.
Thank you. All right, so just a reminder, we are gonna send out these questions that we're talking about in a questionnaire. So you guys will have a little bit more time to think about those and can respond back to us as well. But we need to move on so we can keep getting through this and ask a few more questions. So one of the things we do want to just remind you of is Mill Creek's been doing everything they need to do to get ready for this plan update. They hired LDC Corp a while ago to help get things started. We have a draft public engagement plan that's being reviewed by staff right now, for example, so we'll have that ready for your review. We're putting together GIS system maps, which is really important because, you know, those allow us to plan everything together, land use, utilities, transportation, all of that. We're doing, one of the things that's required too is to look at racial and equity analysis across the community. We're doing that, so we have a report on that that's in draft. So there's a lot of work being done. And these are the, we already know what the growth is that we need to accommodate. These are the numbers related to the population target, breaking it down just for the city of Mill Creek. So a difference in population of about 3,800 more people. Remember, this is through 2044. That's our target. One thing I always like to tell people is we just have to show that you have capacity to accommodate that growth. That doesn't actually mean that it's going to happen by 2044. It may not, but the way things are going around here, it may. There's a lot of growth. Yes, question about that. Yes, yes.
Can finalize that into the
Yes,
finances.
yes, yes.
How about emergency shelters?
That is a category that will be looked at as part of Snohomish County tomorrow, being able to provide those where needed. And I don't know, Clay, if we have any indication yet of what might be needed in Mill Creek specifically, but that's something that we'll bring back to you.
There was 263 back in March.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which was unusual.
247 million.
Okay. 247. In the final version.
A question regarding that.
Sure.
I'm a little confused, so just what you said. Since, right now, as of the January 2022 point in time count, I think that was, it counted 11 homeless people, in Mill Creek, and 9 of them were considered quote unquote unknown. So there's really only 2 valid homeless people. What is the justification for jumping all the way up for 247 in 2044? And are those shelters planning on using those shelters to accommodate the recently passed Senate Bill 5599 that gives emergency shelter and housing to runaways and kids that want to have abortions and sex change
I don't think it gets that specific, yeah.
You have to zone for you would be zoning to allow permanent supportive housing. What gets built would be, you know, we probably come from the state, so you don't get that granular. And just like growth is allocated to the entire county, so, you know, some is allocated to Everett and some is allocated to Mill Creek. Same way with the housing targets as well. So, I mean, you're looking at 20 years, you're going to be growing. So it's not looking at saying all of the permanent supportive housing would be located in the city of Everett, or all of it would be located in the city of Linwood. It's the piece that's allocated to Mill Creek is a micro fraction of what the county as a whole will be.
So that's a county number, the 247.
What's that?
That's a county number of
That is the city of Mill Creek's allocation. What I'm saying is that the allocation to the county as a whole is much, much larger. Mill Creek has been allocated a very small portion of the overall total.
I guess there's no way that you can find probably will have to wait till this bill comes into effect in July for Senate Bill 5599.
Yeah, we'll be bringing back more details. Asking these kinds of questions are good because that way we can kind of document what the questions are and bring back more details. But it doesn't get to that granular of a level of regulation, so. Okay, great. Oops, let me go back. Let's see here. All right, and then, of course, this is our employment target. So we need 736 more jobs, which that can happen in a lot of different ways. Getting more people in town center could be one of those ways, right? So we'll be looking at that. And you know, we'll come back and talk about the plan elements and what, you know, what ones we think we would suggest to be added. And this is kind of a basic structure of each element. It's very typical. You have the overall vision of the plan, there's a vision statement, and then in each element, you'll have a few goal statements, maybe like 5 to 7 goals in each element. There's no formula, it's just kind of what makes the most sense for your community. But, you know, Parks and Recreation could have a goal, for example, I'm just totally pulling this out of thin air. The Parks and Recreation element could have a goal that all homes in Mill Creek are located within a half mile of a park or something. I gotta look at your parks plan and see what it says. But then there would be policy statements under those goals that would help to support how you might achieve that goal. You know, so update the Parks and Recreation plan to look at that level of service could be a policy. So this is just kind of a typical framework. If it's truly an action item that we can measure and that needs to be done by the city, sometimes those are included in each element. Sometimes they're included in an implementation section at the end of the plan. So we can think about that too. This is just kind of a similar graphic to what we showed earlier, but just how, you know, we're taking these kind of external inputs to the planning process and merging those in, and then we have kind of all of our internal thinking, you know, related to the city's plans that they're updating that we need to put into the plan. So we're always thinking about all of these things and bringing them back together in the plan. One of the key things that we'll talk about with those related to those growth targets that I just showed you is where. Where are we going to fit those people and those jobs? And so we've been kind of working on that. You know, we've got a few ideas. Of course, there's the Mill Creek Boulevard plan. There are also areas through middle housing that we could look at. There are areas, you know, in other areas of the city. But we don't have, I think someone said earlier, we're kind of limited on what our options are, right? So we don't have a lot of options, but we want to clearly bring those back and talk to you about those and frame some scenarios to analyze so that we can analyze those and then decide what our preferred direction is for Mill Creek. Yes, Dave?
On the job aspect,
Yeah.
do people working remotely count as jobs in Mill
Yes.
Creek? Or do they count as a job in downtown Seattle?
Oh.
The company they're working for. It's
Yes.
a big change.
It's a percentage, yeah. So it is a big change, and we have recently had some meetings with PSRC about that. And they have said, as long as you can show us some reliable data that's representative of the region and what's happening in our region, that we can count those jobs, that a portion, like if we show that 20% of the region is working from home, looking at different data sources, we can say that 20% of our people are working from home and count those as jobs in the community. So that's great news, especially there are a lot of communities that have much higher job goals than you guys have, which we're kind of like scratching our heads, like, oh, where are we gonna get these jobs?
I'm thinking you don't need brick and mortar to create new jobs.
Correct, yeah.
Well, and Mandy, how do we handle, now it seems like quite a few people are doing a hybrid option where they'll go into their job part of the week.
Right.
They're working from home.
Yep, and that's why it's a percentage. So it'd be, like, if we have the data, and I don't have the data in my mind, I don't have it memorized, but I have seen numbers around 20 to 30%.
Okay.
And that's changing too, because some corporations are saying, no, get back into the office, people, right? But anyway, if we find the data and it says, most people are working from home 2 days a week, you know, so that would be, what is that, 40%? No, that's not right. 40%? Yeah. 40%, then, you know, we would use that. So they would be in their office the other 3 days, at home 2 days, so we would use that data. But generally, it's more like around 20% is what we're seeing. Okay, don't want to get too hung up. So, do you want to talk about this one? You can probably just sit there.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So, we've talked a lot about housing, the facility of planning for single-family homes, attached housing, multifamily housing. So as you know, we've been working on this middle housing project with the city for the last few months. One of the things that was great about kicking off this process is it gave us an opportunity to connect with the community early on about some of the things the city is planning for and to get some early feedback. And we could parlay that project into the comprehensive plan so that we can get people interested and start to get them involved, and then bring you back a set of, you know, policies and code options that you could do if you wanted to facilitate more middle housing. So just in terms of engagement, and Scott, if I've missed something, let me know, or our team here, but, you know, we've done some community outreach. We did the extravaganza, which was great, and connected with the community. Mill Creek Library, went to the town center and did tabling where we could connect with folks. We had a couple of surveys, so one that you can do online, you can still do online. And then we did a mini survey, so whenever we did tabling events, we brought tablets where people could take surveys at that point, just asking them issues about housing affordability and the types of housing they'd like to see in the city. Additionally, we've got a great middle housing website. It'll then connect you to the comprehensive plan website, so we can transition, this project ends, transition people from talking about middle housing to these larger issues that we'll be talking about as part of the comprehensive plan. One of the cool things about this project is everything we're talking about are things that you're required to be thinking about as part of the comprehensive plan update. So housing element changes, you know, it's not only talking about planning for a variety of housing types, including middle housing, it's also looking at equity and displacement issues with your policies. And so we've got an equity and housing displacement report, which is just analyze your current comprehensive plan and look for opportunities where you could have some greater alignment with some new requirements in state law. These aren't big changes, especially on like the displacement front. You know, there's a lot of places that are redeveloping, and you're seeing a lot of housing displacement where a 3-story apartment complex is being torn down and getting replaced with much denser housing that is more expensive to live in. I think probably the biggest issue that you're seeing in Mill Creek is people that are just worried about the cost of rents increasing and outpacing their income levels, and that's an issue that you're seeing community-wide. So that report is nearly finished and will be online, and you can receive copies of all of that as well. And then the next piece is just some strategies and actions, so that address things like, you know, if you wanted to be looking at more middle housing in the city, we've identified those areas of the city where they may be more ripe for redevelopment over the next 20 years. And then what are some things you could be looking at in your code to facilitate certain types of development? So we have them kind of as strategy action sheets. So if you wanted to implement new state laws, we're going to do a write-up on the ADU bill and the middle housing bill for you. If you wanted to look at ways to incentivize certain types of housing in certain zones, we're going to list out what those incentives might be or changes to your code. So think about it, tools in the tool belt. And there's no legislative action you're making as part of this report, but it are things that we will circle back as part of the comprehensive plan. So council members, this will be part of that greater conversation later. Planning commissioners, I'll see you on Thursday, where we'll be talking about the report and everything we're putting together to a greater extent. So. Yeah.
Besides, Mindy mentioned the area, what other areas specifically in Mill Creek are kind of earmarked for or have potential, probably better for?
Yeah. If you go onto the middle housing website, there is an interactive map that is put together. If you go on there, you can see where the middle housing is everywhere within the city, and it has all the neighborhoods. If you click on a neighborhood, it'll show up pictures so that you can see that middle housing currently makes up about 19% of the housing stock in the city, which is pretty amazing. You've done an amazing job. It also identifies parcels that are more likely to develop or redevelop during the planning period. So there's a couple of things. One, you could look at those lots are more likely to develop or redevelop, Or if you did things like rezones, it may trigger other parcels to develop or redevelop. So if you took a lot that today probably they wouldn't remove the home to build, you know, a small apartment complex. If you up the zoning, you know, maybe that would happen sooner. So we've got the preliminary, the base information, and then it's kind of just pulling those levers to make sure that we can provide enough capacity for housing and then hit those different kind of income bands that we'll be shooting for as well.
We'll bring some maps back, which will make it a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, it might be, certainly would be helpful for the public to be able to take a look at it.
Absolutely.
See exactly what we're talking about, not just fine.
Yeah, absolutely, and that story mapping online is a great way for people to go and see real time what's happening in the community and provide feedback, so we'll keep that going.
I think besides the suburbs, I mean, we have Thomas Lake, which is utilized, we have the Sprouts property, which, I mean, there are a couple of areas, there's not a lot, but areas we can look at. And one comment I want to make, you had a bullet point that I think really is important, that housing equals development.
Okay.
I think
Probably,
that's, I think that's an important thought to keep in mind. Housing is not just about accommodating growth, but it's how do we grow a community? We're going on 4 years in October that the new bookstore has been vacant. I had several economists come present to us over the last 7 years, telling us that more economic development, you need more bodies. We're at a saturation point. So I think it's important that we don't look at housing as just housing, but how can we try to accommodate some housing that can also spur our economic development goals and have an overall benefit for our community?
Yeah, good point, yeah. Okay, I want to quickly just go through our process, and then we'll pause for a lot more discussions than answers. I know we have to be wrapped up by 7:30, right? That's the plan? Yeah. So don't look at this big ugly chart, but just know that we've got a detailed schedule that we're going to be working through from now through the end of next year to get this plan done. And this kind of shows you the key steps. So, you know, what we do in the first month is really review all the background. We start to develop the policy framework, analyze these growth allocations. We look at, you know, what are those potential options where growth can be allocated, and bring those back to Planning Commission and City Council and the public for feedback. And then we work to compile the entire draft plan, and that goes through a public review process. And then we do the final comprehensive plan, which we really like to get done by Thanksgiving, because during the holidays is not a good time to finish a plan. So that's our plan. And you can see we have these kind of pause points, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have the plan to come back to you at least 4 other times in the process to gather your input. I think we built in a couple of extra meetings if needed on that. And so, you know, we'll be working with the Planning Commission and City Council, but of course we'll have public engagement. And we really want to involve, you know, the full diversity of the community. When we were working on the sub-area plan for Mill Creek Boulevard, for example, we had a youth group that came in. The room was lively, and these youth were excited about the future of the community and shared all kinds of ideas that probably some of us older people would have never thought of, you know. So it was really inspiring. So as far as these touch points go with you, we've got Planning Commission at 4 planned key milestones, City Council at 4, and then we have additional meetings for the formal adoption process. So I think with that, I'm going to just stop briefly and just ask you to give us a little bit of input on how you want to make sure you're involved and whether you're feeling comfortable with the level of involvement that I'm describing. And also, if you have any, like, burning tips related to community engagement. You know, you want to just make sure that we involve some certain entities in the community. And maybe you have some ideas about methods, you know, like tabling at certain events, or short polls that Clay described, but what are some of the methods that you think really work here well? So open it up again for a little bit of discussion. Yeah?
Now, is your name Andy or?
Mandy, it's Mandy, yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right, yeah.
So maybe, what does the current public review process look like for those of us who are new on the commission?
Well, we have a lot of activity around gathering public input while we're developing the plan, so from now through mid-next year. Then we'll actually publish a draft plan for public review, and usually there's like a 30-day review period of the draft plan.
What does the public review look like? What is it? Do you recruit people from the community, or what does that look like?
We're going to use the planning commission as kind of a touch point with the community, and those are public meetings, so we'll be having meetings with the planning commission. But we'll also have public workshops and open house sessions where we'll invite the full public to come in. We've done this process, we call it kind of the community design dialogue workshop process. That's what we did with the sub-area plan, where we went to the senior center and we met with the seniors and got their input, and we had the Chamber of Commerce and businesses come in and meet with us. We had HOA representatives come and meet with us, and the youth groups, as I mentioned. So we just try to make sure we touch base with all the sectors of the community through that process.
I think, Commissioner, just one thing is that planning's changed so much, and I think you're trying to meet community members where they are. You know, planning is so complicated, and we use all these terms, and, you know, like, how can someone meaningfully engage, knowing that the complexity level, so if we can, you know, they don't have to be experts in planning to be able to have an impact on the community. That's why we're gonna be at events where they can share information, and we can turn that into a policy or provide that information to council. So, I mean, finding those ways to connect with people that are impacted by these decisions that may not be attending all of the planning commission and council. So the more we can understand, you know, who you want us to connect with and the ways and what's important to you and how you're involved, the better job that we can do from the very beginning.
A couple of hands come up, so Mayor, yeah?
Need to engage with you. We had a coffee chat a couple of weeks ago with Jackson and recorded.
Key Club, okay.
Yeah, the unfortunate reality is too often our land use policy is based on the people who don't want to see things change. Youth have a very different vision for the house in the community. And don't hear enough of that. That side of it. It's really important to know what generation people are.
I don't know. Do you know? Gen A now? We're back, we're doing the alphabet again?
Gen A is the new one?
Good point.
Do the alphabet.
Brian, what kind of ideas do they have that you could share?
They had a lot of concerns with missing middle housing. I mean, it's how they are scared that they're not gonna be able to afford a house in our community, but how can they live here?
And guess what? A lot of them don't really want to drive and buy cars. Kind of shocking.
Our transportation system doesn't support that concept.
Yeah, anyway, you hear that, and it's kind of remarkable, and if they can take that household income that they're spending on cars and put that towards housing, they'd much rather do that, so they have to make some tough choices, you know? Anyway, yes.
Mandy, one idea I have, I think that perhaps we should try to reach out to the PTA.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, not just Mill Creek Elementary PTA, because there are more than just Mill Creek Elementary that have.
So like maybe Everett?
Well, through the Everett School District, but there's certain schools that do live here, because I know we have Penny Creek, I know we're at Cedarwood, so it's not just Mill Creek Elementary. To have some dialogue, 'cause I think there's gotta be a way where we can get to the parents.
Yes.
Because they are not necessarily showing up at some things to participate and tell us what they're looking for while they're raising their family. But we need to get in touch with them to see what things they're looking for in the future. And I feel like they're just so busy that they don't come out to things and participate as much. And we need to try to reach out and pull them into the process.
That's great. And that's really one of the things we've done in other communities is we'll have like a QR code or a web link to a short 5-question poll.
Yeah.
That could go out in a PTA letter, and if they don't have time to come to a meeting, they might have time to go on and answer 5 quick questions, which, by the way, I know a 4th grade teacher at Penny Creek who would love to help us Mr. Roberts, my son, so. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yes, Councilmember?
We're gonna look at targeted audience. I think, often we forget about our seniors in the community. And how do we engage them? Because things like you mentioned QR codes and.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're not gonna be able to do that.
surveys, and even myself included. I mean, we're not the most fleet of foot when it comes to that kind of stuff. So how do we get with that
Right.
community and conduct those engagements? We have senior living facilities here. So on-site, in my opinion, is very, very important, the senior center and whatnot. So
Very good.
for that sort of outreach.
Yeah. And to get that input on housing choices that we talked about earlier too. Yes?
Yeah, with that targeted engagement as far as places related more to our apartment
Uh-huh.
people within.
People that are renting.
I mean, that's kind of with the target for middle housing, right, in general,
Yeah.
some of that.
Yes, Dave, yeah.
Going to the people instead of asking the people to come to us.
Yeah.
And do we go to the Lions Club and the Rotary and those service organizations? Because that has
Yes,
a broad part of the community involved.
we love to bring them in. Yes, yeah, because they are service-minded, community-oriented, yeah.
And
Great.
go to their meeting, don't expect them to come to City Hall.
Yeah,
That's the.
good point. Yes, yes.
So, when I saw that list, online, you know, before obviously the presentation, one of my concerns was getting a lot of duplicates, because it seems like the people who attend certain meetings
Yeah.
or attend, you know, certain events that we have are the same ones, and, you know, I absolutely with, our member from Vignal, the comment of, you know, parents don't have time at a, like, party at the park if they're not chasing their kids to, like, answer a survey, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But, another one was all these, you know, great, and thinking of the more targeted, I remember seeing, Chamber, and I remember seeing, and maybe it was like, something along those lines, but I'd actually really be interested, in addition, not
Mhm.
as a side, but the actual, employees, the ones who can't afford to live here, and are taking the bus to work in the city of Mill Creek.
So maybe even something oriented to the buses too, where we could get some input.
Yeah, absolutely, just, it's the people who are doing a lot of the services that we want. We really talk about how, coffee houses and restaurants aren't able to find that staffing.
Yeah.
And so really thinking through, we had a great presentation, from our county council member who talked about workforce training.
Mhm.
And one of the, like, focuses on the county level. And so it made me think, it's just, you know, because it's all range, it's not just people who aren't going to there's just such a range of people who are in those jobs,
Yeah.
that I think don't always get seen because they're just so busy hustling.
Yeah. Yeah, they gotta go home and take care of their kids,
Yeah.
which someone else just mentioned, yeah.
Not going against any particular groups, going to take it a step back here.
Yeah.
One of the things I've seen when we've gone out and asked for input from the community is the time at which we go out to the community.
Okay.
Because at a certain point, we go too early and we ask for input. What do you want? And with no guidelines.
Okay.
Or the question could be, tell us what kind of thing you'd like to see in the future.
And it's just
Anything.
too open-ended.
Anything you want.
Yeah.
What would you like?
Okay.
And so the information that we get, we try to pigeonhole it or bucket it or, put it in, and it can be not really the most accurate information. The most accurate information is the point where we have some options. And at that point, we go to the public and we say, here's some options that we're thinking about. What do you think of these? And that is the best information that we get, because they clearly understand what we're thinking about. And I think the public appreciates the fact that, at this stage, it's our job to, find some options and then come back to them and say, before we move ahead, here are some options, we'd like your input on them.
Yeah.
And that is very good information. That's
Okay.
solid information when they come back and say, out of these 5 things, 60% like item number 1.
Right.
Well, that's pretty good information for
Yeah.
us to have. But
Okay.
you can't really dispute it or say, well, that wasn't a good, clear answer, or wasn't really a good question, or, no, it's pretty darn clear.
Okay.
And I think so at the point of which when we go to our public and ask for input, I'd like it to be at a point where the information could not be challenged when it comes back. That'd be your question.
Oh, wow, okay,
You know,
okay,
so-
we'll work on that.
So when you come back with it, you're not gonna have planning commission or council members going, well, no, they didn't understand, they, no, that,
Yeah. Okay,
That's a good challenge for you.
It's a
we're in the hot
multiple,
seat now.
it's a multiple choice, or a multiple choice test, not an essay question.
Yes, but also remember, I mean, we're gonna strive to get a lot of input, but even if we had 1,000 people to give input, that's only a fraction of your community. So we wanna be careful that we're not asking people to vote, you know, because it's not a full community vote. I really, you know, counsel us against that, but I think taking input is always important, and just making sure we're filtering it the right way and we understand it, yes.
I think there's value in what, Councilmember Zucker was saying, but at the same time, I don't want to put out only certain options, because then what if there's something out there that we would consider that we're not thinking of, and then we're just stuck in our group think?
Yeah.
Because we're not opening ourselves up to, some out-of-the-box thinking from a generation or, group in our community that is living different experiences than we are. So I don't want to,
Get too in a box.
I don't want to close off the open dialogue where maybe they can provide some input that we might want to consider.
Okay,
It's a good point. Maybe
Okay.
you should give them another option of,
yeah.
here are some options, or maybe do you leave something open for the fifth option?
Well,
I
let me,
think we have to have a broader discussion before we get to what the options are, so we know how to frame the options.
Yeah.
Right.
okay,
I saw the
good point.
vision and what I thought of, I've been here 20 years. Town center is just getting started, eGov didn't exist, Arena Sports didn't exist. Do people really expect Mill Creek to look the same as 20 years from now as it does today? And if not, I want to hear what people think, what do they want the city to look like in order to have, for us to come up with some options to consider, we've got to kind of take the temperature a little bit of what people.
But in retrospect of that, I remember when Town Center was being floated, a lot of people had the public had huge problems with it. It was in deep contrast to what our city was all about. We were an evergreen city. We were trees and shrubs and, I mean, the public didn't want it.
Yeah. This is a great
Yeah, they did not want it.
discussion.
They left.
Okay, one more comment, then we have to move on. Sorry,
So, actually, there's two. And they're
Oh,
both-
okay, please,
Okay, so one is, how do you advertise to the public, and what's the average amount of turnout? How many hundreds of people or thousands of people do you get to turn out?
Well, I think for the Mill Creek Boulevard Sub-Area Plan, which was the last public engagement effort I was involved with, we had over 300 people participate throughout the planning process, which we felt pretty good about that. Well, it was also during the pandemic. The pandemic happened, right when we were working on that plan. I don't know, Clay, how many people have you kind of interacted with lately on the?
Yeah, it depends on where you go, so you
Yeah.
can have a lot of interaction at the Easter events, being at the library. I think sometimes it's just making sure you're getting to different, pieces of the community and reaching them
Yeah.
where they're at, and getting meaningful feedback that you can utilize in making decisions. So, I think sometimes it's also dependent on what you're talking about.
I guess what I'm trying to find out, Clay, is if I want to find out where there's a public engagement, how would I find out so I can attend my?
Okay, thank you. Good question. So a couple of different ways. We'll use the website as a way to announce when we're doing things. So
Do you have a banner?
pop-up events, we're gonna have a project webpage, and we'll have information on there that people can get, about where we're gonna be when and where they can attend. When it comes to the actual formal review process of the plan, that will be formally noticed in the paper, whatever papers you guys usually notice, so people will be able to see the plan's available, and they can access it either at City Hall or online, So there's a lot of different ways of letting people know,
Is that like the Mill Creek Review?
I'm not sure what the official papers are that you guys put notices in.
Yeah.
Everett Herald, okay, thank you. Everett Herald.
That's not, I wonder how many, there's quite a substance of people that read the Mill Creek Review, aren't there?
Okay, well, let's put that down as a suggestion of a place to
I mean, it's more
make sure we let people know,
geographic. Yeah, for sure. And, are you advertising it through I mean, what a great way to get a town feel from all the people, like going to the local, festivals.
Yeah.
Did we just have one? Are we gonna have one coming up? I think a art festival or something. And then there's the races, I think. Did you ever take advantage of that?
Yeah, we do pop-ups and tabling, that's what we call it.
Yeah, so we've done that as part of the middle housing project, and that would continue as part of this. So again, that's another opportunity to reach people where they're at, instead of them having to come to a meeting, so.
Pickleball court.
Yes.
Pickleball courts, yeah.
Artists in the park.
Sitting downtown or town center somewhere with a table, yeah. Well, there's a couple more slides I want to cover, but I do want to let you know that this slide deck has a lot more information in it about some of our public engagement activities, things that we do and have done successfully, even here in Mill Creek. So take a look at that when you have time. But I do want to just kind of address roles and responsibilities, because we all have them here in this process. So we've defined these, and I want to make sure we have time to answer any questions you might have about these. But, you know, for the community and the public, thank you guys for being here. We want you to be engaged and informed about what we're doing. We talked a lot about that tonight. We want you to participate and to share your vision and aspirations for the community, because this is your community. So that will be really important for a successful planning process. The Planning Commission is going to be advisory to this process. They have a lot of planning background, they understand planning, so they're going to work with us in kind of more of a technical focus on the plan, and be advisory to the process. They will not be the final decision makers. City Council is, of course, the adopting body for the plan, but they will make a recommendation to City Council. That's what Planning Commission will do. And then, of course, City Council will be the final decision makers, and for you guys to do that, well, you need to be informed and involved all along. So that's why we're going to have these touch points with you throughout the planning process, and not just come to you at the end and say, oh, here's our plan, you know. So we'll be informing you and getting your guidance as we go along. City staff is here to help things rolling, help to keep things rolling, to guide the planning process, to work with us on scheduling meetings with you, which can be complicated. I understand we don't meet in August, so so we won't have a meeting then. But there's a lot of things that staff does and will help us with, you know, everything from understanding transportation needs and utility needs and capital facilities planning that's been going on, to just helping with logistics. And then we are your consultant team. We're the heavy lifters. We're on board to do most of the hard work and keep this process going, deliver what we've said we're going to deliver on schedule and on budget. So you can count on us for that. And I guess I'll stop there and just see if anybody has any questions about that. Yes?
When does our baseline get snapped, like any amount of housing we have today?
When does that get defined?
Yes.
We have some of that information already, so we'll be able to share that at our next session with you, yeah.
Because what I was thinking is, we had a big piece of property called the farm, and made a whole bunch of new units. If those weren't in the baseline, it'd be helpful.
Yes. Good point. The farm, I know, I love that. Okay, great. So, yeah, I won't go through any more slides, because we're kind of reaching the end of our time, but we do have time for, yes, go ahead, Clay.
So just one more item that I think we talked about tonight, but is important, is this process takes a long time, and so I think, you know, we're going to be coming back early to understand from Council on Planning Commission the range of items that we'll be addressing as part of the plan. So like land use changes or code changes, and get some feedback up front, because we need that, because once you give us some general direction, there's a transportation plan that's done. We're going to be reviewing how that plan would impact capital facilities, utilities, schools, parks, and so we don't want to come back and do all this planning at the end. You go like, well, that's not what we're looking for, because it's not just about like just changing the map. It's about a lot of work that would have to be redone at that point. So there's going to be those earlier touch points that's going to say, we're going to analyze this range of issues, and then we're going to come back and so just making sure that there's going to be some early touch points, and then we can engage on all of that, and then kind of, you know, bring back that full package. But just so it's clear that, you know, we'll want that early feedback, because that's gonna set a course of action that we'll be looking at throughout the project.
So are we going, does the planning commission have the right to introduce ideas for policy as well? Or?
Absolutely, we're counting on you for that. Yes. Any other questions for us? Otherwise, I think we're about ready to wrap up. And we've taken notes about some of the things that we want to send out to you, some of the things you've requested, some links to important information, and we'll get going on that tomorrow, getting things together for you. Yes?
Just, I guess, one more parting, I'm still eating cookies.
Okay, yeah.
I say learn from, I don't want to say past mistakes, maybe past chances or bites at the apple. One of the reasons I think the sub area kind of fizzled out, COVID was part of it, but I think we failed to get accurate information, as Petra mentioned, also advertising and making sure everybody's aware what the options are and making sure everybody was included. So I know that's kind of parroting what we talked about earlier, but I think that's probably the key component, getting honest, open, accurate information as often as possible, and making sure that everybody is aware and everybody's on board, and we hear, because like Clay said, we're not gonna be able to just like say, hey, oh, we don't like this, let's move on to another. It is part of a comp plan, let's do.
Okay. Well said, thank you.
I just have a quick question, for information. So I know that when we're having our meetings, we don't have feedback from the public, and we're doing a special meeting that we're doing right now with the Planning Commission. So I want to know the process, because this young man over here was wanting to, ask a question or give us some feedback, and if there's no way that he could do that during our meeting, I want to make sure that we get his information, and the mayor and I can. Okay, so it's like, I think we need to make sure that the mayor and I get in touch with him regardless.
That would be great, and if you want to pass contact information to us to make sure you get invited to the future public meetings, that would be great too.
Yeah, if the council has no objection, we're providing communication.
Let's do that.
Director Todd.
There we go. I might suggest let's put Scott on the spot to mention again the portal and the mailer just went out. There's a lot, everybody in Mill Creek just got a mailing or is gonna get a mailing. That's a really important part of this whole community.
Yes.
Some people don't know that, but Scott, why don't you say that again properly?
Woo, you're loud.
Mike, yeah. So, we just sent out a resident mailer to 9,100 homes and businesses, so everybody should have got one. If you haven't, it should be delivered this week. It has a link to the resident portal, which then has also links to all of our surveys, the middle housing survey, and other, links that we've considered that should be used by our residents and businesses. Just making that information.
And then you're going.
Mike. As accessible as possible.
Time's up.
Yeah, would Mill Creek consider, the marketing department, consider putting a running banner, whatever it's called, a moving banner across the front of the page? There's just so much text and so many wonderful things in the website. It's so easy to get lost and get discouraged. In terms of announcing these public meetings. Yeah.
Or even just a thing that you can learn about the comprehensive plan process or updates on comprehensive plan, something like that.
Okay. But especially the public workshop.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned earlier, we are going to be working really closely with the city communications department and, just making sure that we're aligned with everything and supporting what they're doing. So, yeah, and I don't know, website, is there an opportunity to kind of have something on the homepage that directs people to the comp plan?
Yeah, we'll probably be able to create some sort of shortcut right there on the homepage. The new website should be already completed at the end of this year, maybe early next year, but until then, with the current website, we'll have that. And of course, the resident portal will have that information front and center.
And just to make sure, when we get the mailer set up, we have the middle housing website and we have a comprehensive plan update website already online. So it doesn't have all the information yet, just the kind of that, but it connects people there, so it's kind of that start, so when they got the postcard in the mail, which was part of the middle housing grant, which had to happen now, it kind of starts that process of keeping people involved as well.
And I got mine, so, so it's working. Thank you so much, and, as I mentioned, we'll send out this questionnaire. There's a couple of other questions on here just about any concerns or challenges that you might be seeing that you want to make sure we're aware of, as well as opportunities that you see for your community as part of the process. So I'm hoping folks will give us even more input, through the questionnaire. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Before council goes back up, Mr. Nolan has a quick bit of business he's got to do.
I would ask for a motion for an adjournment.
Dave Hamilton, move for adjournment to the
Second
planning
on
commission.
that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Planning commission's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Good job.
Yeah.
It's gonna be exciting.
Councilman, I appreciate you letting us sit in for,
I think we're gonna-
We're gonna go to, audience participation.
I think we're gonna move to audience communication now.
can we do that?
Yeah, we're gonna have,
Yeah, we're gonna move up audience.
yeah.
If you can.
Yeah, he has a question.
There you go. Next question. Yes.
I felt my waistband.
It's like excited and took off.
So are they leaving? I was gonna do audience communication. I was gonna do it after we got through the consent agenda and reports. It's only gonna be a few minutes. There's not much.
Yeah.
And we'll get it. Okay, are we? Got six back here. 7, we got 6 of us. Okay.
Mic check, Mary.
Sounds good.
We're not on a break. If they want to come back in, we're going to move up audience communication. Okay. It's good to know. Thank you. And they're always free to reach out to any of us as well. And so if you're having those problems, yeah, please let them know. Okay, that brings us to our consent agenda tonight. Item A, approval of checks numbers 66140 through 66173 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $155,713.43. The audit committee was the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Duque. Were there any exceptions?
No exceptions, Mayor. No exceptions. I said it at the same time. Sorry.
And item B, payroll and benefit ACH payments in the amount of $532,252.37. Were there any exceptions?
No exceptions, Mayor. No exceptions.
And city council meeting minutes of June 6, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The consent agenda is approved. City manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 reports. The first one I'd like to report on is the legislative agenda process SOP that was sent out to all of council about a week ago. You may have had the opportunity to review that, keeping in mind that this is a working document that we will continue to edit and improve on through the 2024 process. We wanted to commence that process fairly soon, hopefully in a few weeks, just to get the ball rolling with advocacy with our legislators and county representatives. And so we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of the SOP that we had out there and wanted to move forward, make sure that if you had any questions, you can go ahead and respond to us. And originally we had planned to kind of get a head nod to make sure that you approved it. So I guess going forward, what we'll do is we'll assume that everything's going good. Unless you had any questions, we'll more than happy to address those immediately. Just respond out to me or Laurel. So thanks. If there's no other questions, I'll move on to the next report. Second report is I wanted to refer to a comment that was brought up in our last council meeting regarding our police force being fully staffed. We were probably one off of being fully staffed earlier in the year, and currently, right now, we are technically three down, 3 vacancies in the police department. With that in mind, I want to make sure that it's clear also that when we talk about staff, that considers all the new employees that we hired through police that are not yet officers. Those employees those individuals are waiting for slots at the academy to start their training. That includes officers that are also in field training officer program through Chief White and his trainers. A lot of the information that we do as staff report to council, there may be a little timing issue. I currently did not have a concern, and I still do not have a concern regarding the ability and the process and the efforts by our chief and his team, and their efforts in hiring for those vacancies. Now, the culture and the morale across our city, including police, public works, and every single department has increased tremendously over the past year and a half since I've been here. We're still working on it. There are still things to improve on, and there always will be. So I just want to make it clear, though, that things are improving. Many of the vacancies that we see across all departments are due to many reasons that occur across the city. And I can assure you that it's not due to our culture and morale. Some may argue against that, but I can tell you that from where we've been in late 2021 to where we are now, I could say that we're moving in the right direction. So a lot of things, as you know, I can't go in detail about why there is that attrition throughout the organization, which is quite common, probably, let's say 15 to 18% on average across many organizations. And I could tell you that we will continue to see that. It's just one of the parts of our business that we have to deal with. Going forward, we'll probably find a way to better or more consistently report to all of you on staffing to ensure that any information that you'd like to report on is something that we will give you factual information on probably a more scheduled basis. So I'll figure out a way to do that so that there's no discrepancy between staff and council in terms of your knowledge moving forward on any vacancies across every department. So I think that's all I have on that. If I'll take any questions. If there's no other questions, I'll go on the third report that I have. I'm going to add one more. Deputy City Manager just reminded me that we are bringing forward 3 strategic planning consultants, I think the 27th. If you're aware, we probably received that email about the questions that we will need moving forward. So we'll select probably the top number of questions. We'll probably give the entire list so you have an idea of all the questions that were asked. City staff will also provide some questions, and so those will be used during the Q&A when those consultants come here to present their case for choosing them. So
We've asked you to submit some questions so we can try to keep this process organized and somewhat fair, so we can keep each group to 20 minutes for the interviews, and so that one's not getting more time than another. So if you have questions, please submit them. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
by Friday, end of day, please. Thank you.
Mayor, I have one question going back to the
Yeah.
legislative council, legislative committee. When I was reading that, it sounded like one of the objectives was to bring to our legislators kind of the thoughts of the council and whatnot, what we're looking for. How would we reflect if there was any dissension in the council as to those particular directions or comments? Granted, we'll vote on what they are as a group, but if a council member or two felt strongly against something that the remainder of the council felt we wanted to put forward with our legislatures, I would think we would want to make sure that was known to our legislators.
Well, I think that's a bigger discussion. My opinion would be, we operate by the will of the majority. So if the majority of the council advocates for position, that is the position of the city,
Okay.
regardless of whether others dissent. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add to a thing. Yes, there's representing what the city council's opinion is, but I think it's important. One of the reasons why I want to make sure we get things handled earlier rather than later is so that we can actually bring them in here to tell them what our positions are, what's important to us. And then that opens up the opportunity for anyone who has a different opinion to actually ask those questions of them and bring those things forward to them at that time. So I feel like that's important, that those voices are also heard. And so for me, that's why it's really important that we get them in here to talk to them so that everyone can have their voice heard with our representatives.
I appreciate both those answers. Thank you.
Other reports, city manager?
That would be all, Mayor. Thank you.
Isn't there one from someone behind you? Are we doing a summer events?
That is correct. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Earlier, I was fighting for a chair. Now there's no, just all chairs, right? It's like the second time so far. It's like I thought I was gonna have an audience. At least I got a tennis bar from Josh, so that's good. Right. So this will just be a quick summer events update for, please notice, by the way, do you notice anything different in this slide deck? 40th anniversary, right? There's also a page on the resident portal that talks about it and stuff. So anyway, first up, Party in the Parks, Thursday, June 29th. We're going to be tabling for the city. Our Park and Rec Board is going to be tabling as well. We're going to have our resident survey there, talking about the resident portal. There's going to be ice cream and a food truck, nothing but cakes, handing out stuff, Town and Country and Starbucks, and all these other sponsors, of course, here. So, and it's at Pine Meadow. So we just put out signs today around the neighborhood, just so that they know that it's coming. You might see it when you're running, I don't know. To give them a heads up, we will be pushing out to make sure that people understand to walk, bike, carpool, whatever, to get there. Pianos on Main starts the day following, right after the next day. So we've got Expedia Town and Country and Goldfish Swim School as the sponsors for this. We're gonna have the same pianos, the same locations. It worked out really well. Remember last year we had Q13 do a story on it, which was pretty cool. That probably won't happen again, but anyway, and we're extending it an extra 3 weeks, I think, this time. We got feedback from the community. They wanted them to stay out, so we'll keep them out. And if anybody asked about Goldfish, you didn't, but I'll answer for you. They still say they're going to be doing construction here soon. They said they're going to open midsummer. I don't see that happen, but anyway, if you didn't know, it was going to be a 90-degree pool. Too shallow for any of us, though, I guess. It's like 2 feet deep or something. Let's see. Then after that is National Night Out, Tuesday, August 1st. This is a police event that Jody and myself are helping them organize, mostly organized by Barb Heidel over there. But it is going to be at Buffalo Park. So I don't know, whoever plays bocce ball, bring your bocce ball stuff. Hopefully you know what bocce ball is. Okay, good. I love bocce ball. A lot of people that go to Buffalo don't understand that's a bocce ball court. Yeah. But they're working on a fun schedule, free food and drinks. Should be a lot of fun. And then following that is going to be Party in the Parks. And this is going to be also Board Bash 10, right? Bringing that back. Board Bash 1 started in 2008 and then stopped in 2015 for one reason or another. I never found out. So anyway, bringing it back. Hop Skate Shop is going to help out again with that, which was really cool. The kid in the lower right, if you guys didn't notice, was on our rec guide cover. And his parents reached out to us and just said how elated they were. And he was like ridiculously excited at school talking about it. So that was pretty cool. Made it worthwhile. Again, we'll have food trucks and games, and they'll definitely be using the 40th anniversary theme for that, since that's August 31st. And what is the actual date? September 30th? Okay. And that's pretty much it for our events, but then of course there's the community events, which include the summer concert series. That's every once a week almost, down at the Forum, the Mill Creek Festival, of course, on July 15th and 16th. And then Kids Fest at Mill Creek Town Center in late July. That's my update. Any questions?
Councilmember Duque.
Thank you for all this amazing updates, the work. It's fantastic. It's so exciting that we have these community events, and I'm really thankful for all the hard work that you and all the volunteers do as we put things together. Also, just clarification, that's nice that you called it a bocce ball court. It's actually a little mini track for the little kids to run back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Right. Yeah.
And then back and forth. And then again, that's all it is.
I thought we filled it in the wintertime and it froze over and you ice skated. But
Wouldn't that be amazing? Thank you.
this is good because Jody and I sat at this and said, if anybody's going to find out an event that we left out, it's going to be Councilmember 2K. So we cross-referenced every website. This was it. So.
Is there another art walk, or was the last one, or is the one that just happened?
That was it. Yeah.
That was the one for the
No,
summer?
they have one to be determined still.
That's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Did I see online that South County Fire is going to be handing out life vests at the party in the parks on the 29th?
I saw something about that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
but you don't know about it.
Did I see that? Was that a chamber? Something on social, yeah, that said it's gonna coincide with Party in the Parks when they're gonna be there and doing something else. I just saw that today too.
Okay. Yeah, South
That's-
County
okay,
Fire
that's where I saw it.
promoted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So good opportunity to get like this.
Councilmember Paddock.
I think there was an event missing. Actually, what are we doing for the, what is the city doing in the festival? Do you have kind of an update on the booth and?
Yeah, we usually have two booths, and we'll be again pushing out the survey. We're doing grand prizes this year too, or several prizes. So if people enter in, they won't just get a swag bag of Mill Creek, pint glass and an ice scraper or something in the middle of the summer. But No, we're working with a bunch of our other sponsors to give away dinners and stuff. So anyway, trying to lure people in. We're gonna have those iPads out. People can scan with the QR code, do the survey. We're gonna talk about the resident portal as well. And then we usually work with Frank or somebody in stormwater to try and hit a target too for more community engagement for whatever that might be. Maybe we'll reserve one of those tables for OTAC or not sure just yet.
And will we do anything about the 40th anniversary? Any sort of,
At the festival?
yeah, any sort of banner?
Yeah, you were gonna wear a
Yes.
costume, I think.
I wanted to plug that for the community. Yeah, yeah.
It's a thought. I don't know.
Okay.
Who's our
I'll
mascot?
be the 4, you be the O.
I think that is something that we should definitely put out there, come up with a banner or something.
Okay, any other questions? Any more reports, city manager?
That is the final report. Thank you.
Had a report. I thought it was timely that I received a letter from OFM with our 2020 population estimate. But then just moments ago, I read the bolded language that says these population estimates should not be released to the public or to the press under any circumstances until they are finalized and released on OFM's public website on June 3rd. So with that, I have no report. Mayor Pro Tem, any report?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess from my report, I have something I want to say. With Mr. Wright getting up and talking about the memorial, this is the first I've heard of us not having room on the memorial. And I guess I have a few feelings on this because first, I'm frustrated that Mr. Wright came here to yell at us about it without ever reaching out to any of us to talk to us about it. And that's a little bit frustrating, especially since we just saw him. But second, I think I am interested now that we know this information, in having a discussion and finding out what it would entail to expand it and having a conversation, possibly with Senator Lovick on, if we could get some funding to make that happen. So I am open to, making that happen. And I guess I'm just a little, sorry, I'm in a mood today. I'm a little frustrated that people, when they have things that they're concerned about, they see us out in public and they don't talk to us about it and let us know, because if we don't have a conversation, then we can't do anything about something and then just come in here and yell at us about it. So I'm a little disappointed in that, but I am interested in doing something about the memorial and look forward to having some more information and more discussions in the future about that. Thanks.
Is that your report?
Yes, that's my report.
Councilman Cavallari, your report?
Thanks, Mayor. I was gonna touch on that with the report, but I'm glad you brought it up. I would have appreciated an outreach or a phone call or a tap on the shoulder too. And then he would know that the Parks Board has already recommended that we do upgrades in Library Park consistent with exactly with what he asked and an expansion. The money has already been put aside, for the most part, approved by council already with ARPA funds. So had he, I don't want to say gone through the proper channels. I mean, of course, he has a right to come up here and speak, but it would have been a much more, I guess, subtle evening with questioning. So it is being worked on, it's being handled, and we're going to get it done. Anyway, so not to beat that to death. The other question I have is, city manager, if we could at some point get an update on the nature reserve and the farm. I'm starting to field questions on that again, email and in person, about access and times and public access. So that would certainly be helpful. And that is all I have today. Thanks.
Councilmember Steckler.
I don't have a report, but in my other life as a Kiwanian, I'm working with the farm on their park. And we're in process of planting a new bench there. They have put in a automatic gate now, which goes up at dawn and down at dusk. So they are opening the park and closing the park finally. which they also, now that they have that, they are in process of cleaning up the park because it had gotten quite overgrown. They hadn't been maintaining it. So it is open to the public now. You can drive in during the day, which you were not able to do before. So you can drive in and park, walk the trails, get back in your car and drive out. But it is only open dawn to dusk, which is right now a long open because it's, pretty light most of the time. But that was rather recent, like in the last few months, last 2 months that happened. So that automatic fence was a recent addition. But as long as we're talking about Chuck, another thought came to mind. Chuck also, hey, I was gonna jump on the Chuck wagon. Oh, hey, I didn't mean to do that. Anyway, Chuck also brought to the attention of the council his idea about a memorial wall of citizens of Mill Creek that should be memorialized and remembered. And I'm wondering if maybe this is something that the deputy city manager who's working on both A and B and also with the parks, maybe this is something we might want to add to one of our parks, putting a commemorative wall, maybe even at, I don't know if it fits at the library or maybe with one of the arts and beautification projects. But I thought it was a really neat idea of his to have a wall of honor that we could start to celebrate special citizens of Mill Creek. And this could go on for many, many years. Anyway, just thought I'd bring that up as we're discussing ARPA fund allocations. This would not be a very expensive part of that, but I think it's something that citizens would see. So just a suggestion. I'll stop talking.
Sounds like a proposed new initiative to me. Councilmember Allison.
I just wanted to say, Martin, thank you for your report. Understanding that throughput for the police department, it's not like people get hired and they're instantly out on the street, relieving the people that are working all the overtime. So I appreciate you explaining again that, people get hired, they go to the academy, they come back, they go to field training, then they start relieving some of the pressure on the people that are working all the overtime. And it's also good to hear that the morale, you're seeing a swing in the right direction. So keep up the good work.
Councilmember Duque.
So I have a couple of things. One, I just wanted to share that I'll be at that. I think there's a couple of people going to the Master Builders Association thing next week. But that's, I know I have some dates already. So I'm excited for that. I want to say thank you to Public Works and I believe our police department. I started it just on a random walk with my dog. I noticed like 4 shopping carts, a whole bunch of new graffiti along 35th. And I really appreciated Director Todd and then of course I believe his coordination because we don't have it up yet. Our plans with the shopping carts, that process is still happening. And so I really appreciate that they were still able to be flexible and get those things taken care of because it was quite a lot. And I was on my phone the whole time, just taking pictures of the things. So I just remind us all to submit those things as they come in. And I appreciate all of their responsiveness to it. The other thing I wanted to flag was about Chuck, who spoke earlier. I've actually spoken to him in person about this. So I was very surprised because he and I chatted about this online, in person, and even at the Memorial Day where we talked about, I asked him, is it true that it's full or, and he was like, we talked about it. I actually even went and spoke to the librarian, Darlene, our managing librarian, to ask her about the space. I share this because I also talked to our chair of the Parks and Recreation Board about this issue, the flagging that this was a concern. And so I made sure to share with the board. So when Councilmember Cavallari talked about like proper channels, when I know you also did this, but I did. And I'm confused by that feedback because I did share it. We talked about it. Like I said, I spoke to the librarian to talk more about, because Parks and Rec is talking about expansion to the library park area. Not necessarily my business to tell you exactly what they've been brainstorming and thinking through when I attended that meeting, but there was kind of a concern of how close could it be to the monument? What should that look like? How do we, all that kind of thing. So I went to the librarian, to Darlene, and we talked about that space. We also did a tour of, all of that area. So we did do this. He let me know about Senator Lovick as part of the conversation. So these things have also been part in terms of Councilmember Steckler talking about his walk of fame, his idea that he had. He also shared that with me. I brought it up to the Arts and Beautification Board Chair, and they've already had a conversation about it too. So I just want to clarify, you know, for whoever's listening, but really to the people in this room, there are these steps in place. And as a council member, I take it very much as my service, my responsibility to make these connections. And in that case, when he came up to speak, I was very surprised. I will follow up with him because I just told you everything I did. And there's people here who know because I then followed up with them about it. So I'm hoping that we don't miss these opportunities. But I really don't. I feel like we're moving them as forward as we can in making sure these things happen. So I'm sure I had something else on my report, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councilmember Paddock.
Two things. So one, I sat in on a Snohomish County Health Department update on the work they're doing around revising the Board of Health codes, accelerating time to deliver services across Snohomish County. Sounds like they're on track. I'm going to leave this report. It's, I don't know, 12 slides or so with the city clerk. If anybody wants to have it, and anybody wants to take a look at it, they can talk to the clerk about that. I won't comment on the Chuck situation. We'll make that two out of 7. I will say though, none of us really spoke to someone who came in who said, hey, they were not getting a response when their Boy Scouts came in. No one commented on it. Someone may have gone out and talked to them. You did? Okay. No one except for the mayor pro tem commented on it. So I would just a little balance in what we are addressing and what hasn't been addressed by the community. So just throw that out there.
Brings us to audience communication. Anyone in the audience in the chamber? I'm going online now. Mr. Nelson, your turn. Name and address, 3 minutes, please.
Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive Southeast. In the way of housekeeping, while the presenters tonight were easy to hear, the council members were not, and initially, and it did get better through the meeting. So apparently somebody was working on the problem, but it was very hard to hear most of the council members' comments to start with and discern what they exactly were saying. For the next point, for the edification of the newer council members, our library, and if I can call it that, our library and the Veterans Memorial sits on land that was deeded to the city. Keep in mind that a few years ago, the city went down to the heirs of that property, and the deed to the property states that if it's not used for a library, it reverts to the heirs. So that keep in mind that whatever we do on that property in the future, we could well lose, or at a minimum have to release, rebuy back, or something in order to keep the status quo there for our memorial. The heirs were very emphatic that they wanted their money. And I can understand that. In regards to the consultant you used tonight, I was rather disappointed that you're using the same consultant that we used on the Mill Creek Boulevard sub-area study, as I felt they were rather more pro-apartment than an impartial advocate for anything. And finally, the other comment on credit for excess population at the farm. As I recall, Mr. Rogers, our former planning director, did indicate something to that effect, maybe to the tune of 600 or 800 people in excess of current requirements. So for what it's worth. Anyway, thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Will. I don't see anyone else on the line. So city manager and city attorney, we're going to recess executive session to discuss litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30. Can't read this. 110 Sub. I can't read the citation.
One eye.
One eye, thank you. There's a bunch of other. To discuss potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1. And to discuss the status of collective bargaining negotiations pursuant to RCW 42.30.140 subsection 4. No action will be taken when we're done. Can we get done in 20 minutes or do we need to extend the regular meeting?
I think we can get done in 20 minutes.
Okay, we'll be so adjourned. We'll recess to executive session, not quite adjourned yet. Hey, Adrian, it is 8:28. Council has concluded its executive session. As I indicated at the outset, no action is being taken. So hearing no objection, we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:28.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, again.
Habit must charge by the.
Okay, 1%.